listening to Right Off the Bus.
And we are back, episode 6, Pat, here on Wednesday, February 3rd. We got another awesome episode coming at you. Pat, January absolutely flew by. I know for me, my big thing was running out in this horrible weather, this snow going on right now. And I hit 65 miles in January, hit 31 miles. I didn't have much else going on other than that, working part-time, working on the podcast. But, man, January was flying by, man. A lot of good sports going on, too.
Yeah, January was a whole lot of nothing for me, to be honest. Besides watching sports, man, I tell you, NFL offseason feels like it's already in full swing. Bunch of possible trade talks, coaches already being hired, NBA trades, insane, everything like that. Soccer, baseball trades. Nolan Arenado just got traded to the Cardinals. So January was pretty much the month of sports for me. It was not the month of snow, though. I tell you what, we're here in New England, and minimal snow all of January, but February 3rd, big snowstorm just hit, so we finally got our snow. It's been freezing for the past few days, so I'm hoping winter's over soon. I know we're in New England. We can brave it out, but yeah, I'm ready for it to be over.
I'm ready for it to be over too, man. We got a lot to talk about this episode. Like you said, the NFL is looking like an NBA offseason already. The drama is through the roof. It's been exciting. We're going to talk about some of that. We got Super Bowl 55 to talk about. We got an awesome interview with one of the best MMA journalists out there, John Morgan. We got a lot to talk about, Pat. I'm super excited. We're going to start with football real quick. And one thing we were just talking about, Pat, we got to get rid of Roman numerals. Why is it Super Bowl LV? Like, why does it got to be 55? You were just saying, imagine if the UFC did that. Imagine if the last fight was UFC 257. That would be ridiculous. Can we just get rid of Roman numerals? Why are we using them? It makes no sense.
I don't know. This was the most spontaneous start to a podcast we've ever had. But, yeah, with Roman numerals, I mean, imagine if the UFC did that. We'd have UFC XYZ in, like, 2040. But it's going to get to that point with the Super Bowl. I mean, why don't they just put the numbers next to it? I don't think it would look bad. I think we've just gotten so used to Roman numerals with the Super Bowl that we think it looks good. But I don't think it does look good. I think if we just put 55 next to it, honestly, 2 5s, that's more aesthetically pleasing than an LV to me.
Yeah, and think about when it's like 75, and of course, I don't know Roman numerals, so I'm going to get this wrong, but think about when it's Super Bowl LVVXII, like it just looks ridiculous. It's time to change. Like 2020 was a very progressive year, Pat. 2021, we're still heading that direction. The NFL, we got to get rid of Roman numerals.
Yeah, definitely.
But enough on that, Pat. We got to get into the Super Bowl. You know, since we're talking about Super Bowl 55, we talked about it a little bit last week. But I mean, this is a Bucs Chiefs game. It's been hyped up all week. We got another week of hype coming up. But Sunday, this game's happening. I couldn't be more excited for it. I know I keep saying it, but as a neutral, man, this is going to be an awesome game to watch. Two really explosive offenses. I know you got some keys written down that you want to talk about if you want to jump into your thoughts on this game.
Yeah, I know. My keys for the Super Bowl, I think, there's a couple on both sides. One of the biggest, though, for the Chiefs is that their best left tackle, their starting left tackle, Eric Fisher, tore his Achilles last game against the Bills in the second half. They weren't sure how serious it was at first, if he was going to come back. But he's their key blindside protector for Mahomes. Mahomes just came off a concussion, so that's the last thing you want to see, one of his best protectors go down. But, yeah, they have a guy, Martinez Rankin, coming in, who has yet to see playtime this season. He was on the COVID list earlier in the season, hasn't seen any playtime. So that's going to be a huge factor for the Chiefs to see if they can protect Mahomes. I think he'll do a good job, but that's going to be a huge question mark if the Bucs pass rush is going to be able to take advantage of that and capitalize on that injury for the Chiefs. So we'll see if that is a big thing for the Bucs. Another thing for the Bucs, obviously everyone's talking about it, home field advantage. I don't know, Chandler, are they the first team to ever have home field advantage in the Super Bowl, or just the first one in a while?
It's technically not home field advantage, but they're playing in their home stadium, and no team has ever played in their own stadium in the Super Bowl era because, you know, a city gets to host a Super Bowl like 5 years out. You bid for 2026 right now to try to host the Super Bowl. So, yeah, it's a wacky coincidence. It's never happened before. And like you said, a lot of people are talking about that right now.
Yeah, and I know they try to keep it neutral with ticket sales. I mean, that's how it's always done, mostly because it's in a neutral playing ground. But since they're at Raymond James Stadium down in Tampa, 22,000 fans will be there approximately. That's quite a bit. It's more than I would have expected.
Right.
How many are Bucs fans, and is that going to play into the outcome at all? I mean, it's good for Bucs fans to finally see their team in the playoffs, let alone the Super Bowl. So if there is a lot of Bucs fans, that could be a huge advantage for them. I imagine they'll be pumped up. But for the Bucs, they get to sleep in their own bed, practice at their usual facilities as opposed to Kansas City. And then another of those 22,000 fans, I think about 7,500 are vaccinated healthcare workers. So that's big for the NFL. That was nice of them to do. All expenses paid trips for them. So I know that's a good portion of the fans, and I imagine a lot of them aren't going to be Bucs fans. So we will see how the home field advantage plays out for the Bucs. And then my last key, I think, for the Super Bowl is the Bucs' ability to get Leonard Fournette going. I think it's going to have to be a close game so they can let him run. He's been good in the playoffs so far. He was really good in the second half of the season as well. So if they can let him run and be a playmaker and he gets going, that's going to be a huge weapon for them. It's going to be hard for the Chiefs to stop. But again, it's going to have to be a close game for them to utilize Leonard. So regardless of Brady's comeback resume, I don't think the Bucs get it done if they're playing from behind. I think Mahomes is too good. I know Mahomes is good at coming from behind too, but if you let Mahomes get out in front and really dictate the play of the game, it's going to be really tough for them to get going, especially with their run game utilization as well.
Yeah, yeah. A Tom Brady offense always has to get a run game going. Leonard Fournette is that between the tackle guy. Uh, Ronald Jones has been playing really well too. So I think that is going to be really important to see what they can do in the run game because, of course, their passing game is what everyone's looking at. It's Mike Evans, it's Chris Godwin, it's Antonio Brown is back, it's Gronk, it's Brady. So yeah, the run game will be very important. I think, like you said, the Chiefs their O-line is going to be something to watch in this game because you have a guy who hasn't played all season starting in the 19th game of the year for you, which happens to be the Super Bowl in the other team's stadium. That is a very hard game to play for this new left tackle. And Eric Fisher is an all-pro level guy. He's a fantastic left tackle. Mahomes relies on him. So that will be very interesting to see. I think also watching these past couple of games, Brady has all the time in the world in the pocket. I think that the Bucs O-line has gotten better as the season has progressed. And now I don't think it's any question that the Bucs have the advantage when it comes to O-linemen in this game now that Eric Fisher's out. I think also you mentioned the home field advantage. I think that it is massive. I think the fact that you get to sleep in your own bed at your house, your wife, your kids, your girlfriend, or whoever are there, you're eating, breakfast at your kitchen counter, you have your chef, you have whatever you want. It's home. You are comfortable. You're driving to the facility. You're not getting on a couple coach buses with the rest of your team, so I think that it is massive. I think it's like a huge mental advantage. But when you're playing a guy like Pat Mahomes, that can go out the window a little bit. I
Yeah,
also
it is a
go
huge
ahead.
question. I mean, with the guys, I mean, players that play in the Super Bowl, you listen to the stories. I don't think any of them ever sleep anyways, but they
Mhm.
are in hotels. They're in, places that are strange to them. So maybe sleeping in their own bed will be a big factor. I can't imagine. I can't imagine you'd get much sleep before the Super Bowl, but like you
Right.
said, staying at home, you might be able to.
I don't know. Tom Brady's probably at home with some herbal remedy that puts him right to sleep after his avocado ice
His
cream. I
team of
think
doctors just servicing his foot.
I think that everyone going into this game will have a hard time sleeping except Andy Reid. I think he'll pass right out. And I think Tom Brady will sleep like a baby because no one is more calm in these situations. Speaking of quarterbacks, I think something that will be really interesting to watch is turnovers in this game because I don't expect Mahomes to turn the ball over. He hasn't been doing it at all. But I'm thinking about guys like McCole Hardman and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. How do those really young guys, and Hardman has that fumble that almost changed the game against the Bills, but how do those young guys, step in and how do they perform in the limelight? I think it's going to be really important to see. I don't expect Mahomes to turn the ball over, but guys like that, I could see a fumble happening that changes the game, a punt return for a fumble that changes the game. But on the other side, if the Chiefs force turnovers, I think that they win this game. I said it last week. I think that if Mahomes has extra possessions, I don't think he can be beaten. And I don't want to bet against Tom Brady in the playoffs, especially the Super Bowl, because it's Tom Brady. He's the best ever. He's the GOAT. He did so much for me as a New England fan. It's hard to root against him. But I see this Bucs team to be more turnover prone than this Chiefs team right now. And I think that could really, really change what's going to happen in this game.
Yeah, it's going to be big for if Brady turns the ball over. I mean, for the 3 playoff games they played so far, Brady has 7 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. All 3 of those came in the last game. So before that, in the first 2 games, he had 4 touchdowns, no picks. So is he going to revert back to those first 2 games, or is he going to be airing out the ball a ton because they might be playing from behind? And that's when, you force Brady into mistakes when he can't control the game. So that is going to be a big question mark if he can avoid that. Certainly, if he throws 3 interceptions, it's going to be a Chiefs win. I don't think he can do that at all. But the Bucs defense has been playing good, so they could definitely force some turnovers. But we're going to see if he can revert back to the 4 touchdowns, no mistakes from the first 2 playoff games.
I just want to see a lot of points, Pat. I just want to
Yeah.
see I just want to see like a 30, 35, 38, 42, 37 game. Like I just want a lot of points.
We're not a fan of defense on this podcast, that's for sure. Every week we're rooting for the high scores.
Hey, I'll take some defensive touchdowns. I'll take some turnovers. I'll take some special teams touchdowns. Like, hey, I'm all for the defense. I just want a lot of points.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of not betting against Brady, there's one bettor out there who placed a $2.3 million bet on the Bucs to cover the plus 3.5 point spread. He would net $2 million if that hit. So that guy is certainly not riding against Brady, at least with the spread. Who knows if he would have picked Chiefs money line? But yeah, shout out to that fella putting 2.3 mil on the line. I know I won't be there with him. I certainly will not be betting. So we'll see what happens with that as well.
Can you imagine having $2.3 million that are so disposable to you that you can just bet it on a game like that?
Yeah, just to play around with. Maybe he won a bunch of GameStop stock. Maybe he gave it to a recent cash flow.
I'm just saying, man, like, the Powerball winner that just won in Maryland, $750 million, the Mega Millions winner that won in Michigan, $1 billion. Like, the fact that you can just take $2.3 million and toss it at a game, like, that's stupid. That's ridiculous.
It's enough for me to retire on. This guy's throwing it on Bucs again, Bucs with the spread.
On the spread. Oh, man. That's a lot of money. Anyways, Pat, we got plenty of other football to talk about. Obviously, the big story going on right now is the Rams and Lions trade. Jared Goff gets sent to the Lions with a first-round pick, actually 2 first-round picks in 2022 and 2023, a third-rounder in 2021, and they get Matt Stafford in return. What did you think when you saw that notification from Adam Schefter?
It's funny. I saw a headline and it was like, did the Rams take advantage of the Lions in this trade? And it was because, I mean, the Rams end up with, it was the other way around. Did the Lions take advantage? Because the Lions get, 2 first rounders and a third rounder. Sure, they end up with Jared Goff, but I think at this point for the Lions, you just fired your head coach. You're kind of worried about the future. Matt Patricia's back to the Patriots, I believe. So for them, they're worried about the future. For the Rams, I mean, you are getting not an elite quarterback, but he's a top 15, top 10 quarterback in the league for sure. I think top 10. Yeah, he's a guy that's severely underrated, Matthew Stafford, that is. For Jared Goff, he's going to have a lot to prove with the Lions. I mean, we'll see if he's able to. They're definitely going to have to do some work for him in order to prove that, for him to put in work. But for Stafford, I mean, this is a guy that's criminally underrated. Sure, I think he's 74-90 on his career. I think he's way too good to have that losing record. He's just been on a team that's unfortunately, I know he's had a lot of interceptions in his life. A lot of turnovers. He's kind of injury prone, turnover prone, but I would say he's still a top 10 QB in the league. And I think he's finally going to have a team where they have a great defense. He's got so many weapons. I know in Detroit, he had Galladay, Marvin Jones, but you start to do Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. I'm blanking on who else they have right now, but I think he's got a lot of weapons. He's got the necessary defense to do it. So we could see Matt Stafford make the playoffs fine. Well, he's made the playoffs 3 wild card games, I believe, but he could finally start winning playoff games for the first time in his life.
Yeah, and he's at that point of his career where you're happy for him that he gets the move.
I'm very happy for him. Yeah, he deserves it.
You're like, dude, you have been living in Detroit just on a bad team with bad culture, with bad coaching for so long, and he's solid. I mean, I would say he's top 15. I don't think he's a top 10 guy. He's done some great things in this league, but he hasn't shown that he can win yet. And of course, now he's going into a situation, like you said, with some decent receivers and decent pieces and a phenomenal defense. But, you still had Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones and some other pretty good receivers. So I don't
TJ
know if
Hawkinson, now that I think about it too.
right. So I don't
Top 10
know.
tight end.
Yeah, and I don't know if the skill level goes up for the receiving core there, but I think the coaching, I think the culture, and I think the defense is obviously a massive part of it. I think this trade went fantastic for the Lions. I think that the Rams way overpaid. Now as a Patriots fan, I was like, oh, I'm interested in Matt Stafford. But now after seeing what the Rams gave up to get him, I'm really glad that we didn't go near it. And it sounds like Matt Stafford wanted nothing to do with the New England Patriots as well, which really confused me. A report came out from Tom Curran and other people saying that Stafford said, you can trade me anywhere except New England. And I was shocked by that. But the only plausible explanation is that Matt Patricia is back with the New England Patriots. Like his experience under Patricia had to have been so bad that he said, I can't go to New England. I don't know.
I actually didn't even connect those dots. That makes a lot of sense. I know I just mentioned Patricia going to the Patriots. And when you said that, I was like, why wouldn't he want to go to the Patriots? I mean, the winning culture there is ridiculous. But yeah, Matt Patricia going back, that kind of spoiled that. I guess Belichick probably didn't want him anyways. But yeah, good for Stafford. I mean, I think he's getting out of Detroit, which might be nice for him. He's been there forever. He probably misses Calvin Johnson at this point, but he's going to go live it up the end of his career in LA. Not a bad way to do it.
My two favorite tweets that I saw about this, someone said, thoughts and prayers out to Jared Goff. Nothing happened to him, but he's moving from Los Angeles to Detroit, which I thought was hilarious.
I saw that, yeah.
And then the other one was like, two people looking longingly out of a window, and it's like Matt Stafford leaving, and it says Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson like watching Matt Stafford get to leave Detroit, because those are two guys who are maybe top 5 at their position ever that had to retire early because of how bad the teams were and not getting support and things like that. So
yeah, imagine if Calvin Johnson was on a different team. Imagine him anywhere else over the years.
Oh my goodness.
Unreal.
Career's different. Barry Sanders is a top 5 running back ever, and he retired after like 9 or 10 seasons after dominating the league. It's nuts. The Lions just have never had a great culture there. And hopefully Jared Goff can just get a little break and not have all this pressure on him to win. Jared Goff's a good quarterback, but he's not a franchise guy. I said that a couple of weeks ago on what we've learned. You need to go out and get someone else who can change the dynamics of this team. They are better with Matt Stafford, but they're still not better than the Bucs, than the Packers, than some other teams potentially in the NFC, depending on what other teams do in the offseason, because this is kind of that first blockbuster trade. But I think that it's a really risky move. They don't have a first-round pick till what, 2024 now?
Yeah, 2024.
They haven't had one since I think 2017 because they traded so many picks to get Jared Goff. So you're mortgaging your entire future. Like Mike Tannenbaum on ESPN today was saying that. He's like, this is just a risk it all move. Like you don't get Aaron Donald in the second round. You don't get Jalen Ramsey for anything less than a first round pick. Like this is your team now for the next 5 years. You don't have picks anymore. Like this is all or nothing for the Rams. And I respect that. But if the Rams don't go win a Super Bowl in the next 2 years, then their GM's probably gone. And McVay might be gone too.
Yeah, I would say there's probably the most pressure is probably on McVay now. I mean, the Rams kind of look like the Nets of the NFL now. I mean, it's win or bust for them. I know, like I said, Stafford's maybe top 10 in my eyes, not quite in your eyes, but I know that's not an elite status quarterback, but still, you're improving on Goff significantly, and it's going to be interesting to see what they're able to do. But like you said, it is. I think it's win or bust. At least make the Super Bowl. I think they could be proud of making the Super Bowl. Maybe if they don't win, it's tough to get there and get the job done always. But
I think that it's win or bust. I think it's win the Super Bowl or bust. And I know we talked about this a little last week. I hate that stigma that it's win or bust because so many teams have successful seasons. Like we talked about with the Bills. The Bills had a fantastic season. But for me, you don't have a first-round pick for 7-8 straight years. You got to a Super Bowl, and you revamped your roster and couldn't do it again. For me, you got to go win it because Sean McVay said to them, I can win with Jared Goff. Let's trade up. Go get Jared Goff. We can make it happen. And it didn't
Mm-hmm.
work. And now him and the GM together said, we can win with Matt Stafford. Let's go make it happen. And I mean, this is a lot to trade away. Goff, you signed him to that contract in September of 2019. Right? And then you trade him. That reminds me when Blake Griffin got traded from the Clippers like a month after signing $40 million a year with them. It was a very, very shocking deal. And this changes the landscape for the NFC West and for the Rams. The Rams
Yeah,
have to be serious Super Bowl contenders.
they do, and it pains me because I always hate seeing my team give away draft picks. I love hanging on to draft picks, especially first 3 rounds. I hate to see you give that up. I mean, I get in some circumstances you have to, but it pains me, especially with the Ravens. I mean, if they were to give up top draft picks, I hate it. But for the Rams, I think it did make sense. I don't know about 2 first-rounders plus a third-rounder, I believe it was. I don't know if that made sense. I feel like they could have got away with giving up less. I think the Lions did win that trade, definitely, even though they got Goff. I think they're better for it in the future.
Goff's still young. We'll see what happens. He still has the opportunity to grow and get better. I've said it. I still don't know why he went first overall in that draft and why Wentz went 2. I've continued to say it, but yeah, man, 2 first-round picks, a third, and the number 1 overall pick quarterback from 2016. That's not insignificant either. You know, there's a lot of crazy stuff happening in the NFL, and obviously Deshaun Watson is dominating the news cycle too, Pat. I'm excited for Deshaun Watson to move. I think that Cal McNair and the Texans organization, I think that they've done some things very poorly. I think they've made some horrible decisions. Some of the things they've said, Cal McNair has basically said, I'm racist, saying you can't let the inmates run the prison. Just things like that from an 80-year-old guy in Texas. You can't live and want to work in that culture. You trade away DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson and a bag of chips, man. Like, the culture there is bad. You hire a 65-year-old first-time head coach who has never been a play caller in the NFL to be the guy to keep Deshaun Watson in town. Like, you're just doing nothing right, Houston. Like, I'm so glad Deshaun Watson, I'm glad the news has come out that he said, I want to leave. I know David Culley said, Deshaun Watson's our quarterback. He's in Houston. We want him here. Dude, Deshaun Watson, I really hope you get out. I hope that the haul for you is just incredible because of what Matt Stafford was traded for. Pat, where do you think are some possible destinations? What are your thoughts on this? And what do you think the haul you have to give up for Deshaun Watson is now? Because for Matt Stafford, you have to give up a starting level quarterback who's only like 26, 2 firsts and a third. So what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, for the Texans to go out and get David Culley made no sense to me to start because, I mean, they do have one of the best passers in the NFL, one of the best overall quarterbacks in Deshaun Watson. David Culley was not offensive coordinator. He was passing and wide receivers coach as well as assistant head coach for the Ravens. But we had one of the worst passing attacks in the league. We consistently do. So I don't know what the game plan was there to help improve your offense with the Texans. I think they had like one of the worst offenses in the league too, right along with the Ravens. So, the Ravens had a good rushing attack. That's about it. But for the Texans to go out and get David Culley, I'm not sure what the thought process was there, especially now that Deshaun Watson might leave and he wants to leave. I mean, he made that very clear. So in terms of where he lands, I think he said the Jets were one of his top landing spots. And then what did he say? I think the Jaguars.
Jacksonville and Miami were 2 of them
Jacksonville,
as well.
Miami, and the Jets. So I don't know where he ends up, but like you said, Stafford for all the picks that Detroit got for him, I don't know where that leaves Deshaun Watson. Because if you're trading Deshaun Watson, I would say you get double that. Because not only is Watson just as good as Stafford is, if not better, but he's got all the potential in the world and a longer future ahead of him. He's not as injury prone. I would say, I would argue he's got double the value of Stafford. So in terms of landing spots, I could see him going any of those places. I think the Patriots would be a great landing spot for Deshaun Watson. They have the largest, if not the largest, one of the largest salary cap spaces coming into the new year. I think as of a couple weeks ago, they had 57,310,665 was the number. That was the amount of cap space. So you got plenty of room to make it happen. I think the Patriots would be foolish not to try to go after him. I know they might look to the future. They might sign Garoppolo and go after another quarterback in the future. I think Garoppolo would be another good landing spot for the Patriots as well. So I don't know if they'll go after Watson. I don't know if Belichick wants to make that move. That might be you might have a take on that as well. I think maybe they should go for Garoppolo. I think Watson might be better off at the Jets. I think the Jets aren't going to get Trevor Lawrence. He's probably going to go to Jacksonville. It might make sense for the Jets to go out and get Deshaun Watson, definitely.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the price is double Matt Stafford. I
It's
mean,
got to be.
Deshaun Watson just had the first like 4,000 yard season plus 70% completion since Drew Brees did it like 10 years ago or 6 years ago or something. And the fact that they went 4-12 in those games, like that clip of JJ Watt just walking off the field with him saying, "Sorry, we wasted one of your years." I mean, Deshaun Watson is a next level talent. He's a top 5-6 quarterback in this league, and that's playing for a horrible team. So if he goes somewhere else and gets a better culture around him, and that's the problem. Jacksonville doesn't have a good culture. The Jets don't have good culture. I think Robert Saleh is resetting that, though. I think he's doing some really, really awesome things there. He's hiring some really great people to be on his coaching staff. But obviously, as a Patriots fan, I sit and daydream about Deshaun Watson coming to New England and playing in Foxborough. I fear that he doesn't want to be in a cold weather place after, being in sunny South Carolina, playing at Clemson, and then in Texas. But if he wanted to come to New England, the only thing that I think the Patriots could leverage here is offering to take on extra contracts too, because we don't have a quarterback to trade, unfortunately. We don't have Jared Goff to return. We don't have Sam Darnold to return. We don't have Tua to return. And we don't have a top pick in the draft, which is something the Texans are going to want. Now, I think that what the Patriots could do, and I think this could be a creative way to go about it, I think that the Patriots, with their, like you said, close to $60 million in cap space, should offer Stidham, who has basically no trade value, I would think, as a quarterback, but he's our young quarterback that we could trade. Give 4 or 5 first-round picks, and if it's not that many, 3, and add in some seconds and thirds, mortgage that future because this guy is that good and he's locked up for the next 4 years, and also offer to take J.J. Watt's contract. J.J. Watt is on a massive contract. The guy is hurt. The guy is old. But ever since Gronk left the Pats, we don't have anyone wearing those cool, massive bionic braces on their arms. So I think we need another 6'6", 280 guy to do it. I think J.J. Watt would like to get a move. I think that he understands that this team isn't great. He's one of those guys where you kind of feel like, oh, he can't leave the Texans. He's Houston. He's everything about the Texans. Like, he's that guy. But I think it's a really creative way for the Patriots to use that cap space, get an elite D lineman if he can be healthy, and also get in the game for Deshaun Watson. Who else is going to offer to take on J.J. Watt's contract? Who else can offer to take on 50+ million in just 2 players? It's a lot to spend on just 2 guys, but I think that Deshaun Watson's absolutely worth it. So I love that fit there. The Jets need to make a trade. I think Darnold has a decent amount of trade value, and you have the 2nd pick in the draft. You should give that to Houston for Deshaun Watson. He is that good. I think Darnold, that pick, and maybe a 2nd or 3rd pick in the draft, or 2nd and 3rd round picks in later years, could get it done. And I think Deshaun Watson could flourish with Robert Saleh and just a new culture that's being set in New York. And Deshaun Watson's big time. I don't think he would mind the bright lights. I think that he would like to take on the opportunity of bringing a franchise like the Jets back. I think that the same thing goes for Miami. I think they have a good culture under Brian Flores, and I think that Tua plus a bunch of picks gets you a long way. Like, Darnold and Tua are good trade assets. Unfortunately, the Patriots don't have that. I'm wondering if the Rams also called Houston and said, "What's the price on Deshaun Watson?" And that's why they went for Stafford instead, because I'm telling you, man, if the Rams got Deshaun Watson, I would pick them to, be in the NFC Championship game. That would be
Absolutely. I
scary.
think just by getting Stafford, their Super Bowl odds went from plus 1,800 up to plus 1,500.
Right.
So imagine if they got Deshaun Watson. I think you're easily looking at a Super Bowl favorite. I would say. I
Yeah,
think you
top
have
5
to be.
team in the league. Absolutely.
Absolutely. if not top 3. It has to be. But yeah, I don't have as much to say about the Patriots as you, but I will say from all of that, I feel so bad for J.J. Watt in Houston. That man, he
Right?
looks so defeated. He looks broken. He's mad at the entire locker room. He's like, we got guys here that don't even care. They look like they don't even want to show up just because they're losing. He's like, we got fans out there. You're making millions of dollars. He's like, just show up and act like you want to be here. That's all he wants. I mean, he's the true captain of that team. And I know Houston would be sad to see him go. The Patriots would be lucky to have him. I certainly would be happy for JJ to be in a place where there's a winning culture. A few years back, I thought the Texans were going to have a winning culture. I thought they were going to be a team. I mean, they had the pieces: DeAndre Hopkins, Will Fuller, Lamar Miller. I mean, now they have David Johnson, which might be even better than Lamar Miller.
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson. So I thought they were going to have a winning culture, but it might be time for them to move on. And I would certainly be happy for JJ if he got to move somewhere.
Hey, like you said, J.J. Watt, that guy is the epitome of hard work, discipline, love of the game. That's a New England Patriot right there. Is someone who's going to put their nose down, grind, do the work, and not complain about it. J.J. Watt is a fantastic leader. I think that he would love to play under Belichick. I think that he is a perfect Belichick player, the guy who's just a hard worker, leader in the locker room. And I'm telling you, we need a cool robotic arm brace back on the Patriots. We've been missing it since Gronk's left. J.J. Watt would be awesome here. But I don't know if I don't think Bill Belichick's going to go out and make that big of a trade. That's not really his style. That's not really his flavor. But maybe if Bill's ego is a little in check because of what Brady's doing, he feels he may need to go out and make a big splash. So we'll see.
Well,
what
the
happens.
Patriots might need to make a big splash at receiver because they don't got much going on there. I mean, you can't bring in Deshaun Watson if he's got nobody to throw to. So
hey,
they're
35-year-old Julian Edelman will be back.
yeah, with like
most drops in the league when he played this season.
Torn ACLs and all sorts of injuries. I mean,
Yeah.
N'Keal Harry, they thought he could be the guy. Maybe we see how much he develops in the offseason. Maybe he could be significantly improved. But even then, they're still going to have to go out and get more. I mean, who's their tight end now?
We don't have one. It's Devin Asiai, and it's
We don't have one.
But I will say, Pat's Twitter is in love with Hunter Henry, and Hunter Henry's a free agent.
I've seen that. Yep, they could definitely go out and get Hunter Henry, and then the Chargers. I don't know what they're gonna do.
The Chargers had no idea what's going on. They're hiring Brandon Staley, who was a one-year defensive coordinator for the Rams. I mean, we don't have
to get into so much. We'll leave the Chargers for another time. We'll see how they're doing mid-season next year.
We'll only complain about one team in LA for today.
All right, let's take a little break from the action before our interview with our big guest this week, Mr. John Morgan. Fellas, Valentine's Day is right around the corner, and you want to get your girl something good, something she'll like. Well, the perfect thing would be getting a product from Made by Julia, a small business that makes custom bracelets, Apple Watch bands, and now keychains too. Your girl will be surprised, and she'll be glad you did it. Find her on Instagram at made_by_Julia and DM for pricing and to order as well. Shipping is also available. She'll ship to you wherever you are, maybe not international. But quit pretending you know what to get your girl for Valentine's Day and let a professional like Julia take care of it. Fair pricing, like I said, shipping available, and get it done. All right, so our fourth guest on Under the Radar needs little introduction, but nevertheless, he is the lead staff reporter for MMA Junkie. He's the host of the MMA Roadshow, one of the most in-depth mixed martial arts podcasts in the world. He's a staple of any UFC press conference. He's the great John Morgan. Thank you for coming on the show, John. It's great to have you.
Bro, it's worth it just for that introduction right there, man. You laid that out well, man. I'm feeling good about myself right now. I might have to do this show all the time.
You're welcome anytime.
Well, we know you weren't always in this profession. So when did you get first get into sports journalism, and how did you end up in that field?
Yeah, it's funny, man. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a professional athlete, right? I mean, I just love playing sports. It was baseball, soccer, basketball. I loved it. And but you come to the realization pretty quick that professional sports is probably not going to be the way for you to make a living. But I still want to be involved, and I liked writing, and I liked telling stories, and so I was like, man, I wanted to be a sports writer. Now that's. You got to remember, I'm kind of an old man at 42 years old. So back in the day, you could actually just be a writer. Now you can't do that anymore, right? You gotta do video, you gotta do podcasts, you gotta do it all. But I just wanted to be a sports writer, and so that's what started me down the field. And as it turns out, man, I just happen to be passionate about mixed martial arts as well. And it wasn't, when I was first getting into it, It wasn't an industry, you know what I mean? It was a spectacle back in the mid 90s. But it grew into something, and it just worked out perfect. You know, that I had been following the sport from the beginning. The first UFC I ever went to was UFC 16, if you can believe that.
Wow.
So, yeah, so I'd been in on kind of the ground floor, so to speak. So when I was able to kind of marry those two passions together of wanting to be a sports reporter and also mixed martial arts, it was like, boom, there it is. And let's go chase it, you know. And now I've been doing this full time for about 15 years, and man, love it. Love every bit of it.
Can you talk about how that love of MMA started? Because obviously you had the love of journalism and sports writing, but why was it mixed martial arts that grabbed your attention? And of course, like you said, you know, you kind of came up at the same time as it in the mid 90s, but how did that love of MMA start?
Yeah, it's funny, right? So when I was a little kid, right, like I liked pro wrestling, you know, like Saturday Night's Main Event, like Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Savage and all that, you know. And then I think I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I realized it was fake, and I was like, well, damn it, like I thought this was the greatest, you know. But so that kind of passion for that combat had already been, you know, instilled in me. And then, you know, just so I drifted away from it. Once I figured out it was fake, my passion was all gone for it. And so I didn't really have anything, but through a chance encounter, it was crazy. I was about 12 or 13 years old, and a friend of a family friend was opening a kickboxing gym in Dallas, where I grew up. And that friend happened to be Guy Mesger, who would go on to fight in the UFC later on. But at the kickboxing gym opening, he had a tape of Muay Thai fights playing from Thailand, old VHS tapes. And it was the first time I'd ever seen a Muay Thai fight. And I was like, this is what a real fight looks like. Like, this is insane. Like, I love this. And so I was like, man, Muay Thai like got me into it. And then that just kind of reignited this passion for me for martial arts. I mean, I think they're legit badasses, right? Like, I mean, it's the ultimate sport, right? You know, I mean, it's one-on-one, man-on-man competition, you know? And so, you know, that kind of fueled that passion. And then, you know, started learning. Guy Mesger went to the UFC, you know, started seeing the VHS tapes at Blockbuster and all, you know, all that path. And it just led to MMA. And yeah. And you know, for me, it's still, I think the competition aspect of it is amazing. I mean, it's the simplest competition there is, right? You know what I mean? It's just, it's like, as Dana likes to say, you know, it's in our DNA, right? Like, we've been doing this forever, you know? But also, man, once you get to know the people involved in it, man, just quality human beings, man, men and women across the board. I think the sacrifice that it takes to be successful in the sport is so great, that they're just great people. And I enjoy being able to kind of help tell their stories, you know what I mean? Help, you know, maybe shine a light on who they are.
That's fantastic. And just following up on that real quick, have you ever trained for MMA? Have you ever sparred? Like, what is your experience actually fighting? Just because it is the craziest thing out there.
So here's the thing too, and I think this is one reason like I have so much respect for him. So yeah, I used to train a lot. I need to get back in the gym and train again, man. I haven't trained. I take my son to training, but we haven't been since March, you know, because of COVID and everything. So I'm anxious to get back to that. But yeah, so I used to train a lot, right? I mean, I was training 4 or 5 days a week at the Lions Den, Dallas, which was Guy Mesger's gym, and you know, the Trey Telligman was there, and Pete Williams, and Mikey Bowles, and all these people, right? So, but I never wanted to compete, man. I was like, this is fun. I love doing this. I love learning it. I love, you know, the practice of it. But there was never a part of me that's like, and now I got to go test myself in a cage. You know what I mean? So I think that's one reason I think I have so much respect for these athletes too. Because look, it does take a certain level of crazy to get in there and say, like, I am going to lock myself in a steel cage with another professionally trained human being who is hell bent on doing physical damage to me. You know what I mean? So I was always like, dude, what if I break an arm or something? Like, how am I like, I was waiting tables at the time, you know? I mean, like, how am I gonna support myself? So I was like, nope, I'm good with we can spar, we can roll, we can train. That's enough for me.
I don't blame you there. Like you said, it really does take a special kind of person to want to get in the octagon and do that kind of work and take that kind of beating. And the next question we have, obviously the outlet that you work for, MMA Junkie, it's one of the most prominent news outlets for mixed martial arts now. And I mean, can you talk about how you started with them and now what it's like to be a lead staff reporter, doing your podcast and everything else that you're doing over there?
Yeah, you know what? It's crazy, man. It was a real situation of right place, right time. So I wanted to be in sports journalism, but I put myself through school in the restaurant business, as I mentioned. And I ended up when I got done with school, I got a job as a manager there. Basically, I was offered a restaurant management job for $50,000, or I was offered a newspaper job for $25,000, and I was like, the 50 sounds a little bit better. Let's go do that. So I did restaurant management for years and was successful at it, man. And I enjoyed, and to be honest with you, I enjoyed the hospitality industry as well. And was a general manager of a restaurant. Had like 100 people working for me, a lot of responsibility, good salary, stock options, 401k, insurance, all that good stuff. But it got to a point where I was like, wait a minute, this is good and I'm making a living. I don't hate it, but this is not what I wanted to do. You know what I mean? I don't want to wake up and be 50 years old and think back like, damn, what could have been? Like, what if I'd have chased it? And so as it turns out, I decided I want to kind of get back into writing and that sort of thing. And I used to go to MMA Weekly a lot. I was involved in the forums there, and that was my website of choice, basically, MMA Weekly. And in there, Tag Radio, which is now MMA Junkie Radio, is Trig and Gorgeous George. They posted in a forum. They were looking for somebody to help recap their interviews and write them up for MMA Junkie. I didn't even know what MMA Junkie was at the time. And I was like, hey, listen, I reached out to him. I was like, listen, my name's John. I haven't done anything like this before, but I went to school for it. I'd like to do this. Give me a shot. So anyway, long story short, they gave me the shot. And I ended up, Dan Stupp, the founder of MMA Junkie, he liked the work and he's like, yeah, this kid's good. Let's use him. I was like 26 at the time, but anyway, he's like, let's use him, And so that's how it started. And then MMA Junkie was growing. This was like 2006 and they were looking to hire somebody. And so I was, he brought me on part-time basically, and it worked out great because at the time I was in the restaurant business. I grew up in Dallas, but I had moved to Dayton, Ohio. That's where I was positioned at the time, working in a restaurant there, and he lived in Cincinnati. So it was like thinking about hiring. We were an hour down the road from each other, and so we got together, and he was like, man, let's move forward. So anyway, free work went to part-time work eventually went to full-time work, and then eventually I moved out here to Las Vegas in like 2008. So very, very fortunate, man. I feel like just right place, right time. I mean, I feel like I've worked my tail off afterwards to keep it going, but I really do feel fortunate that, it's kind of right place, right time for me to get that opportunity.
That's great. And you took that chance too. And I mean, now you're at most, if not all, UFC press conferences. And now you're kind of the iconic voice of any UFC press conference. I know you said UFC 16 was your first event. Was that your first UFC press conference, or do you remember your first major UFC press conference that you attended?
Yeah, that was just me as a fan. You know what I mean? That was just me.
Okay.
That was me at, I want to say like 19 years old. I think it was my 19th or 20th birthday. It was in Pontchartrain, Louisiana, which is New Orleans, basically. I set front row cage side for $50, man. Like, you can't even get in the door for $50 anymore, So it's crazy. I can't remember my first press conference. I guess it would have been probably like 2007, probably. Yeah, like late 2006, early 2007. I want to say probably like late UFC 60s, early 70s. It was a little different because we were definitely didn't go to as many as I do now. Like, I mean, well, there just weren't that many back then. You know what I mean? There were like 8 to 10 shows a year at most. I remember like the first time we went and the first time that I covered a show for MMA Junkie, because Dan was the founder. He was the one doing all the event coverage in the beginning. He was handling everything. But I remember the first time he sent me to a show, we covered it together, and I was like, of course I wanted to cover the live events. Who doesn't, And I remember telling him like, hey, man, I just want to let you know, like, I'd like to do more of these. And I remember him saying like, don't worry, there'll be plenty more in the future. And like, man, was he right? You know what I mean? Now they're like 40 a year, and that's just UFC. Then you got Bellator and PFL and everything else. So yeah, it's been crazy to see this thing explode.
And how did you go from, just being an MMA reporter covering the live events to now you're the guy who's always got the first questions? I mean, everyone I listen to, I hear your voice first. No questions asked. Yeah,
it's funny, man. It's kind of become tradition at this point more than anything else. But now everything's in Vegas. I'm at every show. But once we started picking up and going to a lot of shows, basically it started out as kind of a mechanical thing. It's kind of silly how it started. Like, basically, I would kind of always ask for the first question anyway. Like, that's what I'm there for. You know what I mean? Like, give me the mic first, whatever. But there would always be this weird, at press conferences, there would be this weird moment where Dana White would get up there and be like, hey, we're glad to be here, and it's going to be a great show. Who's got the first question? And we would all raise our hands. And then, PR would be trying to move around and get the microphone to us and pass it down. And there were a couple times where Dana was like, what? Nobody has a question? There's no questions? It's like, no, wait, we do. We're just trying to get a mic, And so Dave Schaller, who was longtime PR head, he now works for the Philadelphia 76ers. I remember he just asked, he's like, hey, man, it was just this weird pause. He's like, we know you're going to want to ask a question anyway. Do you just want to start with the microphone? So that way, when he says who's got the first question, you can just go. That way we don't have that pause. And I was like, yeah, I don't mind doing that. Let's do that. And then, the next press conference is like, hey, that worked out really well last time. Do you mind doing that again? It's like, yeah, I'll do that. You know what I mean? And then finally, it's just now like the sound guy just comes up to me. He's like, I'm assuming you have the first question, right? Like, yeah, gives me the mic. So it's kind of just become, I think, tradition at this point. Like everybody seems like everybody in the media is okay with it. Maybe they hate my guts and don't tell me about it. But yeah, it seems like everybody's cool with it.
That's awesome. There's no way they're hating on you, John. That's fantastic. So, I mean, you've obviously been with the UFC for a while now, following it, and like you said, moving up with your career through it. So, can you talk about what it's been like to be alongside the UFC, watching this just exponential growth? I mean, especially the last decade, you've been there for so many of the biggest moments. Can you talk about the growth of the sport and just being there and watching the sport grow and being there for some of these massive, massive fights?
Yeah, it's been unbelievable, man. I mean, you think about it, like when I started, it was like where we still had to explain to people that it was a legitimate sport. I mean, you think about, like, I don't feel like we have to worry about that anymore, where people, like, there was a time when it's not actually a fight to the death. You know what I mean? It's not actually, people thought it was like blood sport or whatever, so it's been crazy, the acceptance. I think, getting on Fox was huge, getting on network television. I think that was massive. And of course, ESPN is just going to keep growing that, the huge platform that they are. So it's been cool to see that kind of acceptance. And you're also seeing now, I think, a generation of people who grew up with this thing, who always saw it there. You know what I mean? So to them, it's just normal. And that wasn't the case for a long time. You'd be on a plane somewhere, hey, what do you do for a living? You start to explain, and people are just like, what? You cover that barbaric? Like, it's like, nah, it's not that barbaric. Like, it's actually, there's a lot of rules, and, it's actually safer than boxing, and, it's this and that. I feel like that's all gone. You don't have to explain that anymore. It's so much more mainstream acceptance. So I think that's been fantastic to see. And now, now people know, people know what the sport is, and they know what it's about. And I think they have a lot more respect for the athletes than maybe they did at one point in time.
Well, I will say, unfortunately, my mom still thinks it's totally barbaric and still doesn't understand. I'm watching a fight or trying to show one of my brothers a highlight, and she's like, that is just messed up. That should be illegal. And I'm like, yeah, you don't understand what's going on.
I'll tell you what's funny. So when I started dating my wife, we started dating in like 2008. And I remember telling her, I was like, she didn't know anything. She grew up in Mexico, and she wasn't familiar with MMA. And I was like, hey, look, this is kind of a big part of my life, and it was getting bigger. I was like, you don't necessarily need to love this, but you should probably know like what it is or whatever, So I started showing it to her a little bit, and she's like, oh yeah, it's cool, I like it, And I remember I was like, oh, you know what? You've never seen the first UFC. I was like, let's watch the first UFC. I popped in the DVD, and I was like, holy crap, this was violent. I'm like, what was it about this that drew me to this? Like, this stuff is nuts. And, the first fight, you got Gerard Godot kicking Taylor Tuli's tooth through the cage. I was like, Jesus. So it's kind of funny that even me, like, it kind of was barbaric back in the day, but now, obviously it's evolved so much, and the quality of athletes that partake in it, and the quality of people that they are too. I think that's, that's a great thing about it too, man. I really do feel like martial arts teaches you a certain level of discipline and respect. And I think that, man, you end up with this humility that comes from, like when you have a bad day, you get your ass kicked in front of thousands of people. You know what I mean? I think that leads to you being humble, in a lot of ways. So, yeah, honored to cover these athletes.
I think that's very well said. Absolutely. And I know there's obviously been a million spectacular moments that you probably remember so vividly, but are there any favorite moments you can think of from any UFC press conferences or any of the hundreds of interviews that you've done that really stand out and you could just say, that was fantastic. That was a really cool moment for me?
Yeah, it's funny. The press conferences kind of roll together because I'm just there, like, doing my job, and so like I forget to kind of step back and enjoy. But what's funny is it dawned on me, and I was like, I got to start paying more attention to stuff like this. Like, you take Jorge Masvidal, like the super necessary thing, right? Like that was an answer to my question. Now I don't feel like I partook in that or created that, you know what I mean? But I do laugh because necessary is not a word that I use very often in everyday life. And I don't know why that's the one that came out of my mouth, but was that necessary? Super necessary. Now we got a catchphrase, you know what I mean? So it's kind of funny, man. There's so many things that have happened that kind of become like iconic moments that it is weird. I'm like, I took part in that. Now, again, I'm not trying to say like I deserve any credit for it. Like it's the athlete, but it is kind of funny to do that. But the fights are the things that stand out to me for sure, man. That's what really stands out to me, because those moments, especially not that the fights haven't been great without crowds. I mean, in some ways, like they've been unique, right? Like we can hear certain things that we didn't used to hear, as far as like the weight of the blows. We can hear the coaches talking. And so it's a different experience. But man, there is nothing like, 18,000 people buzzing and, it creates a special environment. I remember, I think about like Jose Aldo, jumping out of the cage and running into the crowd and the chaos that created. I think about like, this was crazy. I remember when being in Brazil and Nogueira knocked out Schaub and looking around and there's people crying, literally crying because Nogueira is such like a beloved hero there. So to see him get a knockout win over this young, hungry competitor, I mean, they're literally in tears. That's amazing. The stadium shows have been amazing. GSP fights in Montreal, the Bell Center, that building, it's built for hockey. And so it's like, the crowd is like right on top. It's built almost vertically. It's like the limits of how steep it can be, and the crowd's right. So the volume is so loud, and obviously GSP was a national hero. So man, getting to go to Japan and hearing some of the the quiet crowds, right, where it's but they're so cool. They're like clapping for guard passes and stuff like that. It's so cool. So yeah, it's the fights certainly that stand out as the iconic moments. Yeah.
And what was the you mentioned having fans back. What was the experience like having fans back at the most recent stint at Fight Island?
A little weird, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's been so long.
Yeah, dude, it's funny, man. You don't realize like how much this has affected us, right? Like, the first time I was in an airport and there were a lot of people, like I had a little bit of like kind of a panic attack, if I'm being 100% honest, man. It's just I'm not used to being around all the people anymore, and it's so weird how fast we've changed, right? Because I mean, that's only like 10 months ago that all this stuff really started happening. But it's weird how you're not used to being in a crowded place anymore. You're not used to being around all those people anymore. So, but it was good, man. Just having those cheers back. I do commentary on UFC Fight Pass for Cage Fury Fighting Championships, and we had a couple shows at the end of the year where it was only 100 people, but it was kind of a small venue, and man, just the energy that they bring to hearing it. So, it was weird. Like I said, in Abu Dhabi Fight Island, like. All the people that came in had to be tested. They had to be wearing a face mask at all times. There was like plexiglass like surrounding the entire floor area. So the stand, the people were in the stands, but there were no fans on the floor. So, I mean, they all had to come in a separate entrance and all that. So, I mean, it was all done very safely. But it was weird to have, 2,000 people in there, screaming again. But it adds to it. It really, really does. Especially the big fights. I always say like, the prelim fights where there's not that big of a crowd anyway, it's not that bad. It's kind of, but man, when you talk about like these title fights, you know what I mean? Like big championship moments, somebody achieves their dream for the first time and, they want to jump up and soak in that adulation, you know what I mean? It's not there. I think of, right before the pandemic really hit, we had that amazing Zhang Weili, Joanna Jacek fight, right? And that fight would have been, entertaining as hell no matter what, right? But the crowd, man, the buzz that was going on after every round, and even at the end, like there's a literal buzz in the arena because they're like, "Who won? I don't know. You think she? Well, that was amazing." And it was crazy. So it adds so much to it. So, man, I'm hoping that this, we get this vaccine rolled out and we can get back to it. I keep hearing maybe by the end of the year we'll be back to full crowds. We'll see. I mean, I'm thankful that we're doing events. Kudos to the UFC for driving forward, but. Man, I'm looking forward to when we can be in a big arena again.
And you've been to Fight Island now in Abu Dhabi several times. Would you be able to talk about that experience a little bit and, maybe how it's changed from the beginning to obviously the most recent one with fans?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I was thinking about that. If you'd ever told me at the beginning of 2020 that I would spend like 10 weeks in Abu Dhabi, over the next 6 months or whatever, like, well, you're crazy, man. But yeah, no, it's interesting. This last one, so we did a 3-week span, and then we did 5 weeks, and this last one was 2 weeks. The 5 weeks was a long time, man, and it was it was great over there. I mean, Abu Dhabi is amazing, and the hotel that they have us in is fantastic, and there's some good restaurants, and I mean, there's stuff to keep you busy. But 5 weeks is a long time to be away from, like, I have a wife and, like I said, a son as well, and you're on an exact opposite time zone, so it's like a 12-hour difference from Vegas. So it's like you're waking up, they're going to sleep, and vice versa, and so it's hard to connect. So it was tough. But the first one was crazy. Like the first one was amazing, man, and it felt, as much as I don't want to be covering pandemic-related stuff, I wish it never had happened, but being a part of that, like really covering something that's a part of history, you know what I mean? That is really something amazing. You know, there was a documentary on Fight Pass, or no, on ESPN Plus, I should say, called Fight Island Unclassified, or Declassified, I should say. Anyway, it's a 4-part series. It's good. It shows a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and it was so crazy to you know, when you fly over there, and it was weird, man. We got in like late at night. I remember pulling up to the hotel, and like all these people are wearing like hazmat gear and stuff, and they're spraying our bags down with disinfectant. And it was like, man, this was like a movie. It was so weird, you know. And by now they've kind of dialed it back a little bit. You know, it's a little bit less. It's still a bubble, but this last one was tough because before, you know, we had like this whole like safe zone area that we could walk around, and there was a beach we could go to. Now, because they're kind of open for business again, the safe zone was just our hotel, the fighter hotel, and the arena. So you couldn't even like walk around outside. You had to be in a bus. You know, there was like security that wouldn't let you outside. So it was it was a little less entertaining. There was less stuff to do, but you know, but it's necessary, man. I mean, and look, I think we're going to go back in the summertime probably. And we may have to go back before then, depending on, you know, what travel restrictions look like and stuff. I mean, it's a necessary evil, unfortunately. I mean, Abu Dhabi is great. I look forward to going back to Abu Dhabi when like it's just open and we can just go to Abu Dhabi. But I think we'll probably have one more of those bubble experiences at least this summertime.
And moving on with that, I would say that the UFC is maybe the sport that has handled COVID the best, with all the protocols and precautions and kicking young and up-and-coming fighters out for violating those things. So can you talk about how the MMA's just kind of thrived a little bit through the pandemic and some of the adjustments that you've had to make with your job specifically through COVID?
Yeah, definitely. No, it has. I think they deserve a lot of respect and appreciation for what they've done. I mean, it's been a wild ride. You know, I mean, you know, me personally, I was always of the belief that we could go on. I was one of the few even that stood in support, you know, way back in April when they were trying to do the shows out at Tachi Palace. And, you know, a lot of people were really upset about that. And I never understood it. I'm like, guys, it doesn't matter if we do this in April, May, June, July, whatever date you want to circle on a calendar, we're going to have to follow safety protocol. So why does it matter if we do it now or we do it in May? We just got to get the safety protocol in place, and we got to do it. And I knew behind the scenes how hard everybody was working. And you know what? I think sometimes that's a fault of UFC President Dana White is that he cares so little about what people think that he doesn't take the time to explain it. Like behind the scenes, there was all this work going on, but he was just like, don't worry, I got it. Don't worry, I got it. You know what I mean? And so like, while he's right and he's accurate, like I think he would have done himself some more favors if he would have like, okay, well, here's our protocol. I'll bring Dr. Jeffrey Davidson here. He'll explain it to you. I'll bring Jeff Nowitzki. But instead, he's just like, bro, chill. I got this, you know? So anyway, it's been interesting. You know, May, when we were the first sport back, you know, I can't tell you how many interviews I did with, you know, mainstream sports hosts and stuff that week, you know, talking about what was going on. And I think that was huge for the UFC, right? Because I talked to some of these radio hosts that were like, look, you know, before we'd go on air, they'd be like straight up, listen, look, I want to be honest with you. I don't know a whole lot about this sport, but it's the only damn sport we got right now. So we got to talk about something, you know? And I'm like, don't worry, man, I'll walk you through it. You know? So I think that was good. I think it really did, you know, kind of give, you know, a unique opportunity for them to gain fans. And they have been so careful with the way they do things, man. It has changed everything. I mean, I've been tested at this point. I think the number is 67 times at this point that I've been COVID tested.
Wow.
And you
I've
know,
been once.
Yeah. Dude, it's so weird. I'm so used to getting it now that like when we have a week where we don't have an event and I don't get tested, it makes me feel nervous. Like it's kind of cool. Like I get that peace of mind, and for my family too. I get that peace of mind that like twice a week I'm getting tested during an event week, and it's pretty cool, you know. But it's changed everything. I mean, it's changed the way we do things. You know, I think this week we're actually going to go back to having actual in-person media days for the first time since way back in March, which I'm loving, except in Fight Island. We do it in Fight Island because we're in that bubble, but they're figuring out, you know, they've launched these virtual media days, and I appreciate the fact that they've done them because at least it gives us some access, but it's just not the same, you know what I mean? You know, like what we're doing now, web streaming, it's great, but it's not, if we could do it in person, you know what I mean? It'd be even a little bit better, right? So I'm looking forward to getting back to that, but, you know, we don't do media scrum. You know, we all used to kind of stand shoulder to shoulder and set up our tripods and do those media scrums. And now we're all at tables, you know, individual tables, individual workspace that is all spaced 6 feet apart. You know, we got to wear a mask at all times. I mean, literally they have thought about everything. For me to be inside the Apex on Saturday night, I have to go to the host hotel at 6:00 in the morning, get a COVID test, and then stay in my room until the result of that test comes back, and then I can go over to the Apex. I mean, it's literally changed everything. But the UFC, I think, deserves a lot of credit for, and Dana too. I mean, Dana was just crazy enough and stubborn enough to be like, hey, I don't care what it takes. Let's find a way to do this. Let's make sure it's safe, and let's do it. And we've carried on and we've done it. And man, it's been a blessing for us. A lot of sports reporters lost their jobs, you know what I mean, covering beats that weren't happening, and we went through furloughs like every company did, during the initial, stages of the pandemic. But now, man, we're back and we're running, man. And it's a blessing to have a sport that's, 100% operational.
Yeah, it seems back in full swing at this point. And I know you're in Vegas, so has it been easier for you with the fights at the Apex Center? I mean, I know you're used to traveling all over the place. And
yeah, I'll tell you what, I always thought that I love traveling, and I do, you know what I mean? Like, it is fun to travel and, get to see new places. But I'm telling you what, man, doing fights every single week and like coming home and sleeping in my own bed and being with, I'm kind of liking it. I know there'll probably be a day where we start going on the road every week again, but I'm kind of cool with just doing it here in Las Vegas every week, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, no worries. So we got I got to ask, we got the card coming up this Saturday, Overeem Volkov. Is there any fight on there you're most excited for?
Well, I'm definitely excited for the main event. I think it's a big one, especially because that Overeem is kind of nearing the end of his run, right? And can he make a championship run before he calls it quits? It's tough. And of course, once you get up to the top of that division, you got some absolute monsters. But, he's a legend of the sport. So I'm kind of curious to see where that goes. And look, in the heavyweight division, a couple of wins, you are starting to talk about title shots. There's that Frankie Edgar versus Corey Sandhagen. Tough fight for Frankie Edgar, right? But Frankie Edgar, like, true MMA legend, man. Like I always say, if you're not a fan of Frankie Edgar, like, you just don't like MMA, man. There's something wrong with you. Like, this dude is a stud. So any chance we get to see him in action is great, because he is a true legend of sport. But he's got a tough one. Now he's at that point in his career where now he's facing these young up-and-comers, man, and they're absolute studs. So that should be great. But Neil Dariush versus Diego Ferreira, man, that's kind of a little sleeper fight right there. I haven't heard a lot of people talking about that, but stylistically, that could be an absolute banger. And then you go down on the prelims. How about some OGs going at it? Clay Guida and Michael Johnson. Some true OGs of the sport. Yep. So that's great. Justin James is a late addition to there. I have selfish reasons there. He coached my son in wrestling for quite some time over at Extreme Couture, but that personally appeals to me. I want to see the kid doing well. Timur Vallia is on there. This card this weekend, sneaky good. I think there's going to be some really good fights on it, man. I know it's not necessarily pay-per-view level, but you're also not being asked to pay pay-per-view money either. I think there's going to be some fun fights on there.
Yeah, it's certainly stacked. I know I'll be watching.
Yeah, for sure. And John, I know we didn't have you on here to do any consultations, but could you just give a little bit of quick advice to two 22-year-old guys trying to get into the sports writing, broadcasting, podcasting world like we are?
Yeah, no question, man. I'm happy to do it, dude. Obviously, the one thing I always tell people is just grind, man. Put in that work ethic. You know what I'm saying? No matter how quality you are, there may be people that are smarter than you or whatever, but if you can outwork them, that works in your favor. You know what I mean? So put that in there, man, and just keep getting the reps, man. I always tell people, like, the more practice you can get, the better. Even if you're just doing it for yourself, whatever brand of journalism is you want to do, whether you want to write, you want to be a videographer, you want to be a podcaster, you want to be whatever it is, just do it. Even if nobody is watching or listening or nobody goes out there, like, just do it. Even if it's a website for yourself or whatever, it's fine, because the more practice you can get it, the more comfortable you're going to be, and you're just going to get better at your craft over time. And that only comes with repetitions, man. You do it, And then the other thing I say is to me, it's about character, man. Like, just be honest, be straight, be direct, be real. It's just saying things for clicks and hot takes and stuff that you don't actually believe in, I always think is crap. And also, don't ever write, say anything, put out there in the public that you wouldn't say to somebody's face. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay to criticize somebody. Like, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with looking at an athlete and be like, I just looked to me like you didn't have a backup game plan once the initial one wasn't going right. It looked to me like you faded a little bit in the third round. Maybe cardio was an issue. That criticism's fine. But, when you see, that guy sucks, man, he has no business being there. Like, No, that guy doesn't suck. That guy's, already one of the top 1% by being there. So, stuff like that. I just think sometimes, people want to get a little snarky and say a little something for some, for some clout on social media or whatever. And it comes back to bite them in the ass later down the road. So, just think long-term about stuff like that.
I appreciate
Absolutely.
that, man. I
Yeah.
appreciate
Thank you
that.
for the advice. I mean, I would say your work and your dedication is sort of the epitome of that. I mean, especially in the world of MMA, that's a good rule to follow by. Well, we appreciate you coming on, John. Thank you again so much for coming on.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it, man. Hit me up anytime. It's not hard to get me talking about MMA, that's for sure.
Definitely. We don't mind to hear. All right. Well, again, you can catch John on the MMA Roadshow, as well as read any of his articles on MMAJunkie.com. And when you're done watching a UFC event, make sure to stick around for the press conference as well. I know not many of you do. You should. You can hear his voice. You'll hear him first, most likely. You can follow him on Twitter at MMAJunkieJohn and on Instagram at John Morgan MMA.
Well said. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, awesome.
Thanks again, John.
No worries.
Yeah,
Good
that
stuff,
was
guys.
awesome.
Good stuff, guys.
Pat, we gotta talk about this Messi contract. A little soccer, a little extra time here on Right Off the Bus. I mean, so Messi's contract got leaked by a Spanish newspaper, right? And people thought Messi was making about 71 million a year from Barcelona, not counting bonuses, but those normally aren't anything super crazy. It's not, 77 million or anything. But turns out Messi's contract with Barcelona starting in 2017, so that he still has like 6 months left on this contract. Turns out this guy was making up to $670 million on this contract. That's 555 million euros, like well over $500 million for 4 seasons. People thought he was getting paid 71 million. He's making closer to $138 million a season.
Just like
Nuts.
5 times the 77.
Absolutely nuts. Ronaldo, I think, makes 62 playing for Juventus. But get this, for accepting the renewal of this contract, for signing this contract in 2017, 115 million euro bonus. 115 million. I don't know what that is in US dollars, but it's more than 115 million dollars for a bonus. That's a signing bonus. Like the first round pick out of college, the quarterback Trevor Lawrence, he'll get like a $6 million signing bonus or something. 115 million. And then he got a loyalty bonus, or will be getting a loyalty bonus when his contract finishes, of 78 million euros. 80 something million dollars for finishing his contract. So the total value of this is well over 600 million euros, well over $600 million. Just absolutely absurd money. So much so that Barcelona and Messi are both taking legal action against this newspaper. They're investigating the old president of Barcelona to see if he leaked this, because this is bad news that people have found out that this guy is over 75% of their wage budget. Like, just absolutely absurd.
Considering the other players they have too, that's kind of insane. I mean, they have some of the best players in the world, but yet Messi's 75% of their wage budget, like you said. And it's weird. I think about like the top paid athletes list every year. I feel like I don't see Messi at the top every time. And now I wonder if they're just lying to the news outlets too, because I don't think Messi's been at the top of those. I think Ronaldo's up there, like McGregor, things like that, LeBron. But
Lloyd.
And I know Messi's up there, but he's not number one. But I mean, that certainly has got to make him number one. LeBron's not getting paid that much.
Messi was always number 2, like on soccer players. Like he was always behind Ronaldo. But yeah, he was always like 10, 15, 20 on like the top paid athletes. But he's probably number 1 now.
Yeah, the whole thing's just been a lie.
Do you know how much it costs right now to buy and get into an MLS expansion team? Like Austin and Charlotte had to pay $300 and $330 million to start an MLS team now. Like, Messi could just buy 2 of those. He could own 2 MLS teams with his 4-year contract. Like, it's just an absolutely absurd amount of money. They've been hiding it. They've been lying about it. And man, I can't imagine the vibe in that Barcelona locker room. Like, you knew Messi was getting paid and you knew Messi was getting special privileges, but so much so where Barcelona is having to sue a newspaper and like take these reports down. His contract in this report is 30 pages. A 30-page contract. How many initials has Messi had to put on that thing, man?
Yeah,
It
all the
is.
stipulations. And it really makes you wonder because money doesn't equal happiness then because he hasn't been happy at Barcelona for a couple of years, but he's making so much money. I feel like I'd like to think myself I'd be happy anywhere making that type of money, but yeah, it's interesting to think about all the reports that have come out and the president being let go and everything falling apart at Barcelona, but yeah, he's making that much money. I don't know. It's weird to think about.
Yeah, yeah, and it kind of makes sense now why he stayed at Barcelona when he had the opportunity to leave, because you get to finish out and get, the other half of your $130 million for that season, and then you also get your 78 million euro bonus. So I think it makes sense why he decided not to leave at the end of last season when he had the opportunity to. I think it makes a lot more sense now. And Pat, I will say, everyone is saying, well, if he leaves after the season, Man City seems like the fit, right? You don't know if Sergio Aguero is going to stay with his injuries and his age. And Pep Guardiola is in love with Messi. He coached him the Champions League finals, La Liga, every type of winning they possibly could have done with Barcelona, and Pep's at Man City. But as a Man City fan, would you pay this kind of money? Do you think that you think you'd be willing to pay Messi the kind of money that apparently he's earning?
I tell you what, I've been a huge proponent of trying to get Messi for at least like 3 years now because the rumors started, I mean, way back in like 2018. And I would have loved for him to come to Man City. But I tell you what, if this is the contract and the money he expects, I think we're better off without him. I mean, he's what, like 32 now? He's coming up to that. He's 31.
I think he's even older than that because, I
Yeah,
mean,
he's coming up
Ronaldo's
into
like
his age here, and
34.
I don't know. I don't know if we need to be doling out that kind of cash. I mean, our youth academy is one of the best in the world, and we're paying those guys, chump change. So I tell you what, I would have loved Messi to come, but I don't think we need him anymore. I think we're better off.
Messi's turning 34 in July. So at the start
Okay,
of
yeah.
next
So
season, he'll be 34.
God, what's
Yeah.
Ronaldo, like 38? Then I mean, I've
I
always
think
compared like
Ronaldo's 34 or 35.
because I always thought Ronaldo was like he's definitely significantly older than Messi, at least by a couple of years. Not significantly, but he's a few years older.
Ronaldo's 35, but he's turning 36 this
Okay,
week
okay.
in
He feels a
February.
lot older
So
to me.
he's
I don't know why.
36. He's 2 years older. But yeah, I mean, absolutely nuts. I just think about the fact, like you said, I don't think it's worth it for Man City. That's probably Kevin De Bruyne's wage plus Bernardo Silva's wage plus just go down the list. Sergio
Probably
Aguero, Riyad
Aguero's
Mahrez,
too.
Aguero, just everybody, man. It's
Yeah,
absolutely nuts.
Aguero's wage too.
Absolutely nuts. But I'll quit rambling about Messi's contract. I've just been blown away by it for a couple days. Pat, as fun as it is always talking soccer and that crazy Messi contract, we got to get a quick word from one of our sponsors before we get on to what we've learned. You know what it is, guys. It's Book Thinkers. And if you read personal development books, you've got to go check out Book Thinkers. This is a company that's dedicated to helping you fulfill more, live better every single day through books. Through their Instagram posts every day, their weekly podcasts, that team over there at Book Thinkers, they're helping you discover new books, help you connect with new mentors, and you can use those resources to achieve more and live better. The right book can absolutely change your life. You can find out more by searching on Instagram, looking up Book Thinkers, or going to bookthinkers.com. I know right now I just finished Road to Sparta by Dean Karnassus, a book that is changing my perspective on running and some of the limits of the human body and experience. It's been fantastic. I'm going to log in on the Book Thinkers app. Please go check out Book Thinkers. Now, back to today's show and what we've learned.
Yeah, for what we've learned this week, Chandler, I mean, what I've learned, I kind of already touched on this, but I think Jared Goff is going to have something to prove in Detroit. And I was talking about earlier, they're going to have to get some weapons to help him out. I know he's got Galladay and Marvin Jones, nothing to slouch at, TJ Hawkinson. But in terms of weapons, I'm more talking about, I think, the defensive side of things. Matt Patricia was a defensive coordinator, moved to Detroit. I don't think their defense was ever great while he was at the helm. So that's going to be a big thing for them if they can help maybe his O-line, if they can keep Goff protected. If we'll see if he can make something happen in Detroit. I think there's a lot less pressure under him, so he's going to thrive in that scenario. And then for Stafford, he's going to have the best opportunity he's ever had to get some playoff wins in LA. He's never had a great chance to get playoff wins in Detroit. He's made the playoffs 3 times, all wild card games. He's lost all of them. I think if the Rams were to make a wild card game under Stafford, I think they get the job done, and I think they win that wild card game. So I'm happy for Stafford going to LA. He's going to have the best opportunity he's ever had, I think. And we'll see what happens this coming year for the 2021-2022 season.
Yeah, it'd be cool to see Goff prove some people wrong, because obviously he's at the butt end of all the jokes, when it comes to this trade. And, it's kind of like he's a throw-in with the picks, like he's a salary cap match. So definitely looking forward to Jared Goff, having that opportunity to reset and kind of be somewhere else. For what I've learned this week, Pat, I've learned that Liverpool are winning the Prem again, man. I cannot wait. Today, transfer day, when we're recording this in the EPL, Liverpool went out and just signed 2 defenders. Liverpool are missing their first 4 choice center backs. Our first 4, which is unbelievable. The best center back in the world in Virgil van Dijk, Joe Gomez, Matip's out again. Not to mention, Fabinho has probably been the best center back in the Premier League this year, even though he's a D mid. And we got Henderson playing center back. But man, we went out and signed 2 guys. We signed Ozan Kubak from Schalke, which is going to be fantastic, loan with an option to buy. So we get a starting caliber center back with only a $2.5 million fee, $30 million buy option. This guy is plug and play. He's going to probably start as soon as he possibly can for Liverpool once all the paperwork and visas and everything is figured out. Super excited about that. He reminds me of Calgar Sonyuku for Leicester City. Super excited. And then we went out and signed a guy named Ben Davies, not the left back, but the center back from Preston North End. This guy's been playing in the championship for a couple of years. He's solid. He's going to be a backup, but when we're playing so many games right now, cup games, Champions League games, Premier League, such a condensed schedule, having 2 players at a position where we have 0 other than youth players is fantastic. So what I've learned this week, Pat, is Jurgen Klopp's still doing it. John Henry's still pumping the funds in with Fenway Sports Group, and that Liverpool are winning the Prem again, man.
Yeah, big things out of Liverpool, big things out of the Premier League in general. And that is it for our episode today. Episode 6 of Right Off the Bus in the books, Chandler. Good episode. I just want to thank John Morgan again for coming on the show. It was awesome to have him. Glad he came in to do the interview. Please remember to follow, download, subscribe, anything you can do, maybe even leave a review. It really helps us out. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it. And we'll catch you on the next episode. We'll see you next week for episode 7.